And Zach, we're gonna end off this show before we get to our take for 99 with a segment that you came up with. So I'm gonna pass over the mic to you to introduce us to what this segment is, how we're gonna go about it, and I am ready and looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, so this idea came to me last week following the action, and it just hit me like, damn, there's so many different guys around the league, whether it's coaches, GMs, quarterbacks, just key important figures that I think their future with their current team is just very up in the air right now. And look, I know the season isn't over yet, but I'm not going to lie. I've already started to think about the teams that are going to need new head coaches, some of the teams that are going to need new GMs, and which candidates I think could end up going there. And it hit me like, damn, there are just a few dominoes that still have to fall that I have no idea what's going to happen. So I wanted to get your takes on some of these guys, if you think they're going to be back or not, and what makes sense in terms of decision making for all these teams. And that's what came to mind for me. So we're going to bring up a few key guys, and we're going to say if we think they're going to return to their current team, or if we think that current team is going to spurn them and let them go.
Let it spurn, let it spurn, let it spurn. I saw him, man. Salute to Usher. No, forget about it. He was at the Diddy party. Screw you, Usher. Okay, protect the kids. Anyway, okay, we are going to begin. I'm going to throw out my first name here. Zach, we might as well begin in New York. Let's go to Aaron Rodgers. Return or spurn? The mic is yours.
So, Lil, I think this is one where I think the Jets are going to spurn him. I just think that him and Woody Johnson's relationship at this point is just shot. We saw all of the reporting that's been coming out of the Athletic articles recently with the fact that Woody wanted to bench him after just one bad game against Denver. We know that Woody's son apparently has been involved in some of the decision-making around the Jets, which isn't ideal. But personally, if I was running the Jets, I would want Aaron Rodgers back, and here's why. I do think that the last couple of times the Jets have been looking for a head coach, right? They have been in situations where they're just in a clear rebuild and they need to just get everyone out of the building and start completely fresh. And I don't think they're in that position right now. I do think there is talent on this team still, whether it's Garrett Wilson, whether it's Devontae Adams. The offensive line hasn't been great this year, but they do have some young, talented players. Quincy Williams, Sauce Gardner on the defensive side of the ball, and then Rodgers at quarterback, who has played better over the course of the last few weeks. By the way, how crazy is it that the Jets did not punt one time in their game on Sunday against the Rams, and they still only scored 9 points in a loss? Like, I just have to say, the Jets coaching this year is some of the worst coaching I've ever seen. There are at least 4 or 5 games, I do think, with better and more capable head coaching, they could have found a way to win. And when it comes to the GM search, look, I'm not just saying like a requirement for the next GM should be you have to bring Aaron Rodgers back or you're not going to be hired. I'm going to have that GM make that decision. But I do think if the Jets want to win next year, Aaron Rodgers is the best option to have under center. I don't really know what other direction you're going in. So for that reason, I would like to see him return, but I do think the Jets are going to spurn him.
Yeah, I'm going to go spurn here. Okay. Look, Aaron Rodgers, I know he said that he's going to be willing to take a pay cut to mentor a quarterback if Jets draft one indeed, which they should be looking to do that. But I think it's better to end this Aaron Rodgers fiasco. Salute to Lupe. Okay. Because look, they've been searching for their quarterback of the franchise for over 50 years. And clearly Aaron Rodgers has shown us that he's not that guy. Now, I understand that he's going to be under contract for $20 million next season, but hey, I'm cutting my losses. Sometimes you gotta eat the cap. It is what it is, to move on. Look what the Broncos did with Wilson. Look what the Browns should do with Deshaun. Sometimes you just got to end it. Aaron Rodgers want to say everything about everything. I just don't think that's where you don't want. If you're going to go with his alternative route, which is to mentor a quarterback with his personality, with his just his aura and way about him in the media, you don't want that distraction. Okay, the Packers was like, listen, old man, get up out of here. We don't need you mentoring Jordan Love. You didn't even want him drafted. Okay, you made that situation awkward. Okay, and now Jordan Love is spreading his wings. Okay, We don't want to do the same thing over again. Oh, you didn't want to do it a couple years ago, but now you want to do it? Okay, no, stop the madness. Cut your losses. Spurn.
So here's where I disagree. Aaron Rodgers was with Jordan Love for 2 years, and even though he didn't love the pick, I do think he did a good job mentoring him. Love has said that he was a good teammate and really helped him out. And I do think
Later
too, like,
on,
do you think what do you think is the number one problem with the Jets? What do you think that's been this season? Because I don't think it's been Aaron Rodgers. I think that it's been
no, I
their
think
head
Aaron Rodgers
coaching.
has a lot to do with that. I do. I've been watching. Believe it or not, I'm not really a Jets fan, but I've definitely watched more Jets games this year than I've had in the last probably decade. Okay, this year in particular. And Aaron Rodgers had multiple game-winning drive opportunities, and he threw interceptions, or he just didn't get the job done. Teams, they send the all-out blitz. That has been the recipe, and Aaron Rodgers still cannot defeat that because he's not as mobile as he was before. Now, he'll make a couple plays where he'll show some scrambling, from here and there. I've seen that, but clearly he has a lot to do with why they're not winning. However, it's a culture thing. He was supposed to set the culture along with winning. He hasn't done that. So his value was definitely diminished because he's supposed to be a culture setter. Okay. When Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, he set the culture. Okay. Guys that were normally dropping balls were not dropping balls anymore. Okay. They were playing, they were disciplined, not undisciplined. Okay. Because Tom Brady came over there and did that. Think about it. Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions, turning the ball over. They were known for penalties. And Tom Brady came over there, and by his appearance, okay, that went out the window. Aaron Rodgers has not had that same impact over here. And coaching obviously is a big part of that too, right? That's why you have a coach. And clearly they got to get that figured out. But Aaron Rodgers, I mean, come on, bro. Just cut your losses. Bad trade. Clearly he's, not the same guy anymore. Spurn.
But don't you think if the Jets have any realistic chances to win anything next year,
No, they're not winning
Rodgers is.
anything. They're not winning anything. I think right
I mean,
now
but how do you know
it's
that with
about
that? Like, what if they hire Mike Vrabel?
I think what the Jets need to do is prioritize rebuilding. That's what they
But
need to do.
isn't there too much talent on the roster to do that? Like, you're just going to get rid of Garrett Wilson. You're just going to get rid of Breece Hall. You're going to get rid of Devontae Adams. You're going to get rid of all those guys.
They should have made the Devontae Adams move. They did. And now it's time for them to cut their losses. I mean, they've been literally going in that direction. I mean, you don't fire a head coach that early. You don't fire a coordinator that early without some type of rebuild. Now, you do that if you're Buffalo because they did that when they fired Ken Dorsey. But guess what? They had Josh Allen. So even though it was supposed to be a rebuild, remember, they traded Diggs after that, okay, in the offseason. They were rebuilding, but there's no such rebuild when you have Josh Allen. Aaron Rodgers is not Josh Allen. So clearly, the direction they're going is rebuilding. They might as well just embrace it.
I disagree. I would hire Mike Vrabel, and I think with better coaching, this Jet team could be a
Of
playoff
course,
team.
you'll say that. You're a Jets fan. You want to win.
No, I mean, but this team hasn't made the playoffs in 14 years. Like, could you really go on another rebuild? Like, I just don't think that could happen. Like, you have to win eventually.
We might as well move on to the next one. Let's go Ryan Pose here. I want to go with him. And Zach, I want to start this one off. I'm gonna go with Spurn. Okay. And look, Nate Davis has been a disaster on the O line. DeAndre Swift is not worth $24 million. Number two. Their third round pick, excuse me, got benched, was a healthy scratch this weekend. Okay, number three. The offensive line stinks. Number four. He brought back Matt Eberflus so he can hide behind his incompetence, and that's because that was his boy. Number five. Okay, Caleb Williams development has been shot thus far. Number six. Okay. Do I need to say more? This guy literally came in with his introductory presser and said that we are going to run the North. I remember that. Some things stick with you more than others. Okay. He said that they was going to run the North. You know what he did? He ruined the North. Why? Because the North is the best division of football, and your team is the worst team in this division. So instead of you running the North, you ruined the North. Spurn.
I agree. And mainly it's because I don't trust him as the guy that is going to be able to find the next head coach. Now, it's weird. I don't even think he's going to be the one responsible for hiring the next head coach. If you saw that press conference after they named Thomas Brown the interim, it kind of seems to me that Kevin Warren, the guy that was running the Big Ten and kind of ran that conference into the ground, he's going to be the guy that's responsible for hiring the head coach. And Ryan Poles just kind of seemed checked out to me. during that press conference. And I think you have to move on. You need a reset. I don't love having a coach and a GM on two totally different timelines. And maybe that would be a scenario where I could see Ben Johnson taking the job, is if you allow him to get his own GM. But the problem is, I just don't trust the Bears organization to make these decisions correctly. So I would spurn him as well. But do I think they are? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think my last point, he's literally holding on to that big trade that he won. That was one of the all-time fleeces, which was that Bryce Young trading that number one pick to the Panthers, who ended up drafting Bryce Young. That was his big, this is my ticket here. This is what my resume consists of. Other than that, it's been a lot of misses, and that's why I think it's spurned.
You're fired.
What? There's just no excuse for the offensive line to be this bad. Like, when you draft a quarterback and you did a solid job surrounding him with weapons, Keenan Allen has looked a lot better over the course of the last few weeks. But look, that Rome Odunze pick, and it's nothing against Rome. I think he's going to be a solid player. But how do you not take an offensive lineman there? I don't get it.
Agreed. Zach, I'm going to let you pick the next person.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go. There are a few coaches I have in mind, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Jared Mayo. I think we've spoke about it on the show before. If we were running the Patriots, we would get rid of him in a second. And I think if they do, this is going to be a very appealing job. This is one of the major dominoes I was thinking about earlier when describing the segment. But my question is, Robert Kraft literally handpicked Jared Mayo to be the guy to replace Bill Belichick years ago in like 2019. Before Mayo even became a coach, Robert Kraft put a clause in Mayo's contract saying that he was going to be the guy that replaced Bill Belichick. And this season has obviously been an abject disaster. I think we all expected the Patriots to be a pretty bad team, but they're poorly coached. Mayo has no control of that locker room. He has no problem throwing guys under the bus. And the report that came out before that Bills game this week was the Patriots plan on keeping Jared Mayo as long as an unforeseen collapse happens the last 3 games. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Patriots probably played the most complete and best game of the season on Sunday against the Bills. I know they lost, but I think New England, like, you could make the case they actually outplayed Buffalo in that game. And I just think when it comes to this team, Drake May is a guy that a lot of coaches would want to work with. And I just think you would be sabotaging his development if you hold on to Jared Mayo. So again, I think we've had this conversation on the show before. If we were running the team, he'd be gone in a second. But do you think Robert Kraft will make the right decision and move on from the guy that he handpicked to be Belichick's replacement years ago?
I don't. I think Robert Kraft is soft, and I don't mean that. Let me be clear here. I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner, right? We talking about a guy with $1 billion. He can make me disappear. So let me be careful and choose my words wisely. Okay. I mean, he's soft-hearted. He's loyal to the core, and that's a good thing. It's not wrong with being loyal. In football, sometimes you got to make Godfather decisions, and finally he made that with Bill Belichick. But it's going to be an interesting dynamic. He just made one with Bill Belichick. Is he inclined to do so again immediately with Bill Belichick's predecessor? That's going to be very interesting, especially when you do see the positives with Drake May's development, as far as just Drake May making do with what they have, because they threw him into the fire, okay? And Drake May, he was successful in the fire, okay? And clearly, in that Buffalo game, I was impressed with that. I was impressed, a long time. In the Buffalo game against Josh Allen, with the exception of a couple turnovers that allowed Buffalo to come back and win that game, Drake May is looking like the quarterback of the future. The guy got good stuff. So that dynamic of Robert Kraft and what ultimately he decides to do is really the big mystery. I think for me, it should be Spurn. I think he shouldn't have been the coach to begin with. But first year coaches, especially in that dynamic of just being picked as a protege, is definitely hard to read, especially when you consider Robert Kraft's loyalty.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'd be surprised if he's gone, but for the best case for the franchise, he would be. And again, like, when it comes to Ben Johnson, I think he would pick the Patriots and even another job, maybe we'll get to it on this show, that I think could open, but it's no guarantee. I think there are more appealing jobs out there than Chicago, especially given the fact that he's in Detroit and he might not want to go up against Dan Campbell and what they've built over the course of the last few years. But if I'm Ben Johnson and the Patriots job opens, that would be one I'd be really looking at, which would be a problem for the rest of the AFC, because you pair those two guys together, man, that would be pretty exciting.
Jared Mayo.
You're fired.
Do it on Christmas, my guy. Zach, you got another name for me?
I do. This is another team in the AFC and another coaching decision I'm very fascinated about, and that's Antonio Pierce with the Raiders. For anyone who missed it, the Raiders won their third game of the season on Sunday against the Jaguars, and they broke like a 10-game losing streak with it. But it's one of those rare instances where the fans of the team that won were actually pretty upset, because with this, the Raiders not only moved back one spot in their draft position, but they literally moved from the first pick to the 6th pick. And that's a problem, because there are only really 2 quarterbacks, I think, in this draft that are difference makers. And Antonio Pierce seemed pretty happy after the win. So did Mark Davis. But I just wonder what they're going to do. Like, did this win at all affect his job status? Because I think Pierce is similar to Mayo in the sense that the ownership doesn't want to make a move after just 1 year. This is, of course, Pierce's first year as the full-time head coach. But if they do find a way to trade up and draft a quarterback, I don't think he's the guy you really want to bring in. So I think Pierce is in a similar boat to Mayo in the sense that if I were running the team, I would move on and try to find the next great head coach. But I just don't necessarily trust ownership to make that right decision.
This one is tough because, look, obviously it was in their best interest long-term to tank, to lose that game and draft Shedeur Sanders. I'm going to be a firm believer of that, because sometimes as human beings, where we mess up at is the fact that we live in the now and we don't think about long-term. For example, you're 30 years old, you get a house and you have 3 floors. You know damn well when you get to 70 years old that you ain't going to be able to go up the steps, and you're not going to want to do all that, right? Clearly, when we get to the next season, and if Shedeur Sanders looks good, we're going to be like, damn, they should have tanked that game, because we did the same thing with Sam Darnold when they won against the Rams, I believe, when Trevor Lawrence went to Jacksonville, even though Trevor Lawrence is not what we thought he was, right? We did the same thing. We do it all the time, even Tua, with Brian Flores, and they missed out on Justin Herbert. Now they had to settle for Tua, right? Clearly, there's a difference in talent. But
how about, I'll throw one more. The Texans 2 years ago, they won that game against the Colts.
Absolutely.
And not only did they win it, they converted like multiple crazy fourth downs late. And hey, even though they won that game and they were killed at the time, I think they're feeling pretty good about getting CJ Stroud. So you just never know.
You just never know. And I think if you're Antonio Pierce as a coach coaching for his job, you want to win the game, because you might not be here to draft Shedeur Sanders. So I get it from his perspective. And plus, if he would have tanked the game, it goes against everything that makes him him. I mean, the thing with Antonio Pierce, he's not an X's and O's guy. His whole coaching theme is change the narrative. And that is by winning games you're not supposed to win. And that was one that you probably wasn't supposed to win. And look, he made the wrong decision as far as quarterback one, going with Gardner Minshew over Aiden O'Connell. In hindsight, obviously. And we'll see if he's going to be able to, build on from that. If I had to give you what I think should happen as opposed to what will happen, that's tougher for me, because I can see him coming back. So I'm going to go slightly here. I'm going to go with turn.
And you have Tom Brady in the mix too now. Like, does that influence it?
Yeah. Good point. Zach, I got a guy for you and a guy for us to talk about. Let's go Mike McCarthy. Because for me, Zach, I would love to begin here. I'm going to go with turn. Look, that Cowboys and Buccaneers game on Sunday Night Football was arguably the most inspiring football I saw all year. And I was not expecting that. That was a game, I'm going to be honest with you, Zach. The first drive or two in the game, I had the game on. So I had one eye watching the game. Right, I'm not cross-eyed, but I had one eye watching the game and I was on my phone and doing something else. But when I saw how good that game got and how they was hitting out there, immediately I'm like, Lil, stop what you're doing, put the phone down, and we're watching the game. And man, I'm glad that was the best decision I made all week, with all due respect, because that game was good. And that defense, man, was clutch in the fourth quarter, generating takeaways. They had that interception. I believe it was Jawan Lewis ripping the no. Yeah, it was Jawan Lewis ripping the ball away from Nate McMillan, when it looked like a clear touchdown. In the final play that ended the game really was the Rashad White. I mean, he got the ball ripped out from him by Dewan Bland. I mean, just grown man bully football. Mathematically, you was eliminated prior to the game. You could have thrown the towel. And to play inspiring football like that, that message to me was received. We want Mike McCarthy back, and he should be back. Return.
I agree 100%. That was a very inspired effort. One you didn't expect, but it's been clear over the course of the last few weeks, even without Dak Prescott, this Cowboys team has come to play. I was even impressed with them the week prior in Carolina. We know Bryce Young has been playing a lot better lately. The Cowboys were on a short week. They lost that Monday night game to the Bengals, which they easily could have won if it wasn't for that fluky blocked punt that they fumbled. And they dominated that game off a short week. That was impressive. And look, yeah, their defense was very clutch. I thought Cooper Rush was making plays late. And we know when it comes to Jerry Jones, like at this point in his life, I don't think he's necessarily eager to change head coaches, especially if he wasn't last year. Like, I think if he were going to fire McCarthy last year after that embarrassing playoff loss to the Packers was probably the time to do it. We know Belichick is now off the board. I just don't really know who else they would hire. And you got to give credit to McCarthy because I do think his team has really played for him. I think he's established a culture, and I do think he'll be back return. I agree.
All right, Zach, you got another person you want to bring up?
I do. Well, and I have two guys that are on the same team. They work as a unit, and that is Joe Shane and Brian Dable with the Giants. I'm going to say Spurn. I don't think either of these two guys should be back. And just to be clear, I do think that Brian Dable is more worthy of keeping his job when opposed to Joe Shane, but they're a package deal. They came together from Buffalo. And I think it's one of those scenarios where if you let one go, you got to let the other go. And look, these guys had a great first year. They won that playoff game against the Vikings, but everything has literally fallen apart since. And when you look at some of these moves that Joe Shane has made, there are a few obvious ones, right? Like he paid Daniel Jones. I think the owner wanted him to do that. So I don't really blame him that much for that. But he let Saquon Barkley go. I think he should have been a Giant for life. But then there are some other ones like drafting Evan Neal, the guy that was supposed to be your right tackle of the future, and now he's unplayable. Like he can't even get on the field. Kayvon Thibodeau is just a guy. He'll have some good moments. He'll have some flashes here and there, but he's nowhere close to the guy they expected him to be when they took him in the top 10. I like Malik Neighbors a lot. I think he's going to be a heck of a player one day, but why didn't you draft a quarterback this year when you had Michael Penix on the board? You had Bo Nix on the board. You had J.J. McCarthy on the board. Like, what exactly was the point of drafting a wide receiver when you didn't have a quarterback to throw him the football? They let Xavier McKinney go. He is having a phenomenal season for the Packers. They let Julian Love go. He's having a great year for the Seahawks. There have just been so many moves that Joe Shane has made that I think has just driven this franchise into the ground. And I don't think he deserves the chance to pick that next quarterback in this draft. I think both those guys should be spurned.
I mean, luckily for the next head coach and potentially the next GM, they're going to have Shedeur Sanders to throw the ball to Malik Neighbors. So even though, we don't like them taking a wide receiver when it was clear they needed a quarterback, the next regime is going to have that luxury, barring that they lose out, that they're going to be able to pair Shedeur Sanders with Malik Neighbors. And you'd rather that than Shedeur Sanders or potentially the quarterback they would have gotten with no-name wide receivers, So you'll prefer it that way. And I agree. I'm going to go Spurn here. I don't think they should return. And that Saquon Barkley decision by Joe Sheen is fireable in itself. It's a fireable offense. I don't really have to dive into the other things that and the other mistakes and levels of incompetence that he's shown. Because that right there by itself, when you look at the year that Saquon Barkley is having and the fact that they just had to cut Daniel Jones, that's fireable in its own right. Brian Dable, look, he was the guy that turned on the cable when he first got there. They won a playoff with Daniel Jones, And that was the highlight of his success as a coach, and it's been downhill ever since. And even if you want to blame it on incompetent quarterback play and roster construction, even the play calling, definitely was spotty a lot of the times as well. So I think they came in as a package deal. They should go out as a package deal. All right, and Zach, I got one more, and it's actually a pair: Justin Fields and Sam Darnold. For me, starting with Sam Darnold, absolutely return. I think he has definitely shown us a lot. Now, the playoffs is going to be another thing. He would have to bomb in the playoffs for us to really come back to this conversation and think otherwise. If he's like literally west the bed in the playoffs, that's another topic for another day. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about that topic throughout the off season. But he's been playing well. The talent, sometimes I think we forget he has talent. The throws that he's able to make, like the one of Justin Jefferson that he made. Matter of fact, I think I have that clip here. I'll play it real quickly here. I mean, just the accuracy, on that ball that he threw to Jefferson. Maybe I don't have that clip. We saw the game. We know what we're talking about here. And look, man, I think for me, the question is how. How is he going to come back? Like, what's going to be the alternative? Is it going to be the franchise tag? Is it going to be a long-term contract? And I think, and I said this point before, the good thing about the NFL and playing the position of quarterback is that all you have to do is have one good year. Geno Smith, one good year, got paid. Daniel Jones, one good year, won a playoff game, got paid. The list goes on, right? Baker Mayfield, one good year, got paid, even though he has a good year now. But I'm talking about before, right? All you have to do is have one good year. Jordan Love, half a good year. It was inconsistent last year, had a good second half, got paid. So clearly Sam Darnold is up for that. So I'm going to go with return. And with Justin Fields, I'm going to go that's a very interesting one. I'm going to go return because I do think that will be the quarterback of the Steelers' future. And yeah, I'll give you the mic.
So I agree with Darnold. I think you have to bring him back, and I do think the franchise tag is probably the best way to go because I don't think you could trade J.J. McCarthy coming off of the injury. Like, I don't think his value will ever be lower than it is right now. So I would bring Darnold back probably on the franchise tag. I think that's probably what makes most sense for both sides. And coming back to the Giants, that's really what they should have done with Daniel Jones a few years ago and not committed to him with that long-term deal. You know what's crazy about the Steelers? As great of a year as they've had, I still feel like their quarterback question has not been answered. Like, I think what they're probably going to end up doing is paying Russell Wilson and letting Fields go. And I don't think that's the right decision. But at the same time, has Fields shown you enough that you could just go into him as your starter for next season when you're trying to win? I'm not sure. So I think that's an underrated storyline with the Steelers, is that as great of a season as they've had, I don't think their quarterback questions have completely been answered yet, but I think they're ultimately going to end up committing to Russ and letting Fields go.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.